Welcome to Good News, Bad News, the Libertarian Christian Roundtable, where every other week we challenge the status quo and give you the libertarian Christian analysis of what's happening in your world.
Those who just try to make this a political issue. Freedom. I have the freedom to kill you with my COVID. No, I mean, come on. Freedom.
And that was President Joe Biden telling you, mocking you, dear listener, that you shouldn't want your freedom to kill people with your COVID, that you, I don't know, homesteaded? I don't understand. This is like the first president that I know, or maybe ever in American history, who has mocked people openly for asking for freedom.
Yeah.
It's completely, like, first of all, baffling. Second of all, like, I don't know, I would want to say immoral, but that's like kind of a trite to say, oh, it's immoral, even though it is. What do you guys think? Like, is this unsettling to you? Are you outraged? What's your take here?
So now we're gonna polarize freedom. Like, we've polarized every other freaking issue that we could possibly talk about. Now we're gonna polarize freedom.
Well, we need par for the course for the federal government.
True.
But a true leader, when they are asking of their followers, we're going to say followers here generically, to do something that is not exactly pleasant to do. Number one, they're going to do it. They're going to lead by example, which these people never do. And secondly, they're going to approach them in a way that invites them in rather than excludes them. And that is certainly what we are not seeing from the federal government, which is just par for the course, again, for the federal government that never decides it really needs to lead. It just needs to bludgeon you over the head. Well,
it's kind of all it can do. And, what strikes me about this is that the concept of freedom and people wanting their freedom is a threat to the state. The state doesn't want you to want your freedom. It wants you to comply and just be happy and, be told, hey, you know what, you can have, here's some money every month because you have children, or here's some money every month because you exist. And it doesn't want you to rebel or refute its demands. And then just the way you could see in the way that he was doing this, it's like, come on, like, it's his signature. Come on, man, like, your freedom.
Come on, man.
What's interesting, Carrie, I'd love to hear your take on this. This idea that I can kill you with my COVID, as if it's like this weapon that you intentionally wield, the way that you might want to say, I want to kill you with a gun, which no one's saying that. I want to defend myself with a gun for those people. Right.
Well, I want to kill you with my flu. I want to kill you with my cold. I want to kill, like, fill in the blank, man. It doesn't work. I mean, the only reason why it would work on anybody is because there's already a number of people who've been saying this, who think that people who are choosing not to get vaccinated, or talking about the problem with government overreach and these lockdowns and everything, they keep saying, you just want to kill grandma, you just want to kill people, and it's
a rhetorical setup. Yep. That is, yes, ascribing bad motivations where there clearly are none. Yeah, because nobody wants to go out there like, I mean, this is where the Great Barrington Declaration got it right? Because it was about, you need to isolate the vulnerable in the right way, and we need to make sure that we're, being so conscious about our own health. That's a good thing. None of us want to go out and like deliberately get people, sick like that. So play smart, do the right thing, but then don't ascribe bad motivations on every possible scenario. I mean, come on, man.
Just because you don't like it.
Yeah.
Well, and it presupposes that two choices. Either you do what you're told by the medical establishment, no questions asked, or you're murderous.
Yeah.
Those are the two options available to you.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's fine to be able to raise your hand and go like, I think there might be a third option. Even if you can be pro-vaccination or think it's a good thing, like me, and I think that's fine. But you don't have to be that. Like, come on, guys. It's just come on, man. Missed it again.
Aaron, you're in Texas and you have all kinds of freedom there. Are you? Is it like? Is this like Texas COVID massacre happening? This is Halloween weekend, guys. I had to.
Oh, that was a good one. I appreciate that.
Okay, so I guess this had to do with Halloween.
No, don't worry about that part. That was just a reference.
Please tell me that's what it's related. That was the whole purpose.
No,
of
I'm
it.
just wanting to know your take on this because you're living in the land of the murderers because you live in Texas where there's freedom.
That will be Florida. I think that's the one that has been taken.
Fair enough.
A little bit. No, I mean, for me, it's just the way it was handled in Texas. For me, was as fair as you can say. It was just look at hospitalization rates, and the county decides. And I thought that was the healthiest compromise that you can find, and it worked pretty well as far as I can see. We're a low density state, so it's a very different animal than everywhere else. That's precisely what is the problem with having federal mandates on anything, is that just by pure population density, policies are just not going to have the same effect, nor even the same purpose. So just by that, decentralization solves way more problems than anything centralized organizations can do.
Yeah. Okay. Norm, you were talking about impure motives or just ascribing bad motives by people, and I can't help but switch to our next topic by talking about people who clearly have bad motives, and that's politicians. Or I think it was Janet Yellen was saying that we should consider an unrealized capital gains tax, and I'm like, there's literally no other reason than I want more money from people who are billionaires. Like, well, I don't know what the pure motive here is, so maybe I'm guilty of ascribing impure motives.
It's not just to billionaires, right? It's like they can say that, oh, they're only going to do it on, high net worth individuals at first, but that's just gonna be the impetus to push that number down eventually. Right.
You mean like with the income tax?
Yeah, amazingly
it's almost
enough.
Like the government has done this before, where they say it's only for the top 1%, but now we're all in it.
Oh. Well, and also tracking bank transactions. That started out at a very, very high price, high dollar amount, and now they want to do it for $600.
$600.
Yeah, so they're going to see my grocery bill and just, and freak out.
Yes.
Oh,
congratulations.
No. And they're going to claim that that's
too many boxes of Cheez-Its.
They just want to have access to it, which is sort of like, oh, we're just doing the metadata. We just know who you're calling. We're not listening to your calls, kind of excuse the NSA is given. Aaron, you are an economist, so I'm sure you've crunched the numbers. And if we implement this, billionaire tax,
it's like,
I mean, can you confirm or deny that this will actually completely cover the national debt or the deficit?
Like, honestly, it's like a day.
Oh, so we need to tax them
and
every
honestly,
day.
I'm not exaggerating. I haven't done the numbers, but I mean, I just know intuitively that it's literally like 1 or 2 days.
Welcome to my
that's
sarcasm.
Pretty generous. I would have said hours.
Yes. Yes, probably, because just imagine the point of reference is all billionaires together, all of their wealth, not their income. That finally people kind of figuring out, which is nice. Mm-hmm. All of their wealth, if all of it got taxed, all of it, nothing, it would just cover 9 months of federal spending. Now imagine how we're going to cover the federal debt.
Wow, dang,
that's a good one. Let's keep it a 9 just to be generous, But now imagine
generous.
The dollar doesn't go as far, so it,
So usually, what the complaint is really that, okay, sure, maybe it's only very few people that are going to get the tax, and we probably shouldn't care. But the problem is that that's exactly how the income tax started. And even, just to be fair, even MMTers, which could be considered to the left on economics, would tell you that income tax is a terrible, terrible, terrible tax. Even for the most left-wing purposes, is just like taxing income. Yeah, let's have people have less income. Like, it just makes 0 sense.
Nothing's ever enough for them.
Exactly. That's what I want to know.
So it's just going to keep on growing. I don't see a reason why it shouldn't grow.
Yeah.
Like,
what I want to know is if they get this, if they pass this, is the left going to shut up about the rich not paying their fair share? No, they're not. And that's okay, predicting here and ascribing impure motives. Sorry, I'm in a mood, I guess. But like, no, they're not going to shut up because that's just how they are. They just want more. They are greedy. They want more of what other people have, and they will not stop until they have it, no matter how big the tax is.
No, well, and if we've learned anything about economics, it's that the wealthy produce wealth for everybody else. So if you take away the wealth from the billionaires, we're going to get screwed too.
At some point, you run out of other people's money.
Yeah.
It's taxing the supply chain, if you want to.
That's a really important point. It's literally you have to think about it like this, right? So if you're taxing, and Aaron just alluded to this, and I think it's worthwhile for the uninitiated perhaps to kind of explain what does it mean to have this unrealized gain thing. Because that this actually makes a big difference. If you're taxing unrealized gains, well, then what you're essentially doing is you're saying that there is a portion of capital that needs to get nuked every year in service of the government, period. I mean, think about it, right? Because that's what you're saying, that the wealth that is tied up in capital, it has not been exchanged around for dollars anywhere else yet, needs to get liquidated in the form of cash so that the government can go spend it. That it is literally taxing unrealized gains is literally the destruction of capital.
So so if they
liquidation
knew this,
of capital,
would they want to basically force you to liquidate it so that it is now realized? Like, is it a forcing their hand? Because of course,
the wording. Don't worry about the wording. It's just nonsense, random words put together. It has no contact with reality. The point is, it's a property tax. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you own, you pay. That's it. You own it. They give you whatever percentage. And
yes.
You pay for it, and they are the ones deciding how much your net wealth is going to be. No different than property, because it's a property tax. That's what it. I mean, it's,
so what happens if you have a capital loss?
That's what I want to know.
Well,
you know the answer to that question. You're not going to get you're not going to be able to report that until it's a realized loss. That's the answer to that question.
Well, that's the expected answer, but I was listening to another podcast and they were saying that there are thoughts about how they would handle that, and it would be just basically another bureaucurrency. And it would be a bureau just basically sending money back and forth, collecting money one year, sending it back another, and all you're doing, and then there's going to be a cottage industry of people of either, well, not lobbyists, but of accountants helping you figure out your unrealized capital gains in such a way that it just benefits the wealthy again anyway. Sorry, I'm using leftist terms.
Mean, I don't know about that.
No, okay, that it affects more the ones that are not at the top, if you want to say that way. It's any kind of tax, the wealthiest are always going to get the best accountants to take care of it. And the people that they're barely moving up, at some point they're going to be the ones they're going to get hurt, because they're not going to be at that level yet to get the resources and the help to try to avoid it one way or another. So that's kind of the big deal with.
So this could have an opposite
those type
effect
of taxes
of what they want. The wealthy actually sort of maintain more power in a specialized way.
Oh, but it's that's the big deal, is that there's always ways around paying those type of taxes one way or another. If it's not the first year, because they didn't have enough time to figure it out. By the second year, they'll figure it out.
There's huge, and also there's obviously there'll be huge incentive to do so. That's certainly the case. But what doesn't follow for me though is that that's not indicative of some form of extra political power per se. That's so when so I don't let's not somehow turn this into, well, it's just the wealthy trying to get away with stuff or something like that either.
No, that's how it's going to be.
They're going to play.
If that's not, no, what I mean is in 10 years, there's going to be this new apparatus that we're quote unquote used to. And the left is going to basically be saying, look at these billionaires. The ones that are wealthy have all the money to avoid the capital gains tax, the unrealized capital gains tax. And it's just going to be back on the same cycle. It's back on the same horse again. Right. It's they don't ever learn the lesson that rich people have more than non-rich people. Duh.
Imagine that.
That's kind of part of the definition.
Well, yeah, it's maddening. It's maddening because it's not like billionaires walk around with just dragging around bags of cash behind them.
Right.
Most of that wealth is tied up in capital, and that's done for a reason, because that is the best way for them to ultimately produce something with it. As opposed to just, well, let me just hand over more to the government because I know they're going to do a good job spending it.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So these people are not stupid. They know what the best allocation of their own resources is. I mean, that's their own resources. They have the interest in doing so. So it's baffling. It's baffling on so many from so many different angles as to why any analysis that I can imagine cannot realistically come up with a good reason that this works.
Yeah, it's gonna work for their purposes, which is to look like they're doing something against the rich.
But okay. Well, that's different.
The optics are
you're equivocating. now we're equivocating on the word works, and then that's not what I
don't know. That's not a bad
I was
point,
teaching
though.
this week. Politics is about perception, not about reality. So.
Yeah.
Well, especially since all of Biden's campaign promises about family medical leave and all of these promises that he made getting taken out of his little infrastructure package.
Oh yeah, because the rich will get blamed for having the $5 trillion largest increase in spending in the history of man, rebutted. I mean, come on, man.
It's the theme of tonight. Come on, man.
Yeah, that's the episode subtitle. Come on, man.
So let's transition to our segment where we take listener questions, and this is from Matt in Central Pennsylvania, and does not happen to be Matt Bellis, who's always showing up on our show. It's a different Matt altogether. Because I know everybody here is gonna be like, "Wait, did Matt just send in a question?"
Yeah,
because he would.
Because he would
probably.
Are we Christian first, or are we libertarian first? I think it's somewhat obvious that we are Christian first. Libertarianism, then, is the best political framework to live out our beliefs. Norman, why is this a good question? And then what do you think of the answer? Or what do you think the answer is?
Well, it's a good question in as much as it's something that you typically hear new Christian libertarians or Christians who become libertarian kind of asking themselves as they get more involved and think through these things and realize that certain things that they may have held before are not particularly true or need severe modification in order to conform better to reality. So it's a natural question to ask. However, I think it belies a few things that are a bit confusing and misleading at times. And I think that as a result, I've said before that you want to call yourself a Christian libertarian or a libertarian Christian, like, be my guest. It doesn't really matter all that much, because if you claim the name of Christ, then you know where your first allegiance lies, and that's just the reality of it, period. So whether or not you put one as an adjective and one as a noun, in whichever order you choose, it's not really material. There is another sense in which we can get into why this is again, a good question, and that's sometimes is referring to the phenomena that we've seen in the past, and it hasn't been talked about much in the last 10 years or so, but in the aughts, 15 years ago or so, there was kind of a parsed out difference between Christian libertarianism and libertarian Christianity. The latter being more referential to kind of Rushdoonyism or Christian Reconstructionism at times, and that is not really very present anymore. Whereas Christian libertarianism is kind of like connotes a kind of a Christian take on libertarian philosophy in per se. So whether you want to call yourself a libertarian Christian or a Christian libertarian, I don't think that really matters. There does seem to be a little bit more of a difference in connotation or meaning that is dealt with the other two: Christian libertarianism, libertarian Christianity. That's a bit different. I do think, though, that one other particular point is important here, and that's that, as I've stated many a time, I don't feel that it is appropriate to consider libertarianism as some sort of like we're going to tack on some massive new portion of worldview into Christianity. That's not appropriate per se. It is more akin to mathematics. I don't go around saying, or asking myself the question, am I an engineer first or a Christian first or something like that? No, that's not the way. Or
we're not playing pin the tail on the theological donkey.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. I like that.
Or elephant.
Theological donkey. Yeah.
Or elephant.
Or elephant.
Okay.
Or porcupine.
My input will be is every political theory is a tool, no different than a hammer. You never go around asking when you're using a hammer, they're saying, oh, am I first a hammer user or am I later a Christian, or what am I first? Well, please, if you do, don't continue doing that. Okay, stop.
Hey,
but if you don't do it again.
All we ask is that you don't use the hammer as a tool of aggression.
No.
Thank you very much.
I think it needs. There's a little bit of extra nuance you could put there, Aaron, because there's not typically maybe a little bit more.
I'm pretty sure
he's being sarcastic. No, he's being sarcastic. That's the sarcastic Aaron face right there. Yeah, okay.
No, minimalism, my friend. That's why. Okay, we'll talk about it later.
Wow. Okay. No, but there is a moral component to it that is different than certain other things, but it's more akin to mathematics and a field of thought than it is some sort of tacked on, like it's not a tacked on worldview or something like that. It doesn't work. So
I would.
That's what I had to say.
Yeah, and so we should also not use our mathematics aggressively against others, which is apparently
especially because mathematics started out as religious belief with the Pythagoreans,
and people died.
That's okay. Carrie, we're gonna have to have a discussion about that offline.
Oh, okay. Well, I was listening.
Don't worry, Carrie. I'm on your side.
I was reading a book today
I'm
quoting
not.
people who said that mathematics is racist because of its or it's against social justice or race, or it's race. I can't remember the quote because its commitment to objective truth.
Hot take. That's more like the Pythagoreans than what we're talking about here.
Okay, so nobody will hear that conversation between Carrie and Norman unless it turns into a podcast episode, which it most certainly will not. But what you can do,
bore everybody to tears.
But if you're really interested, if I get 5 people email me what this conversation was like, we'll talk about it. You can email us roundtable@libertarianchristians.com. What we really
want to know whether you care or not about those topics.
We don't really care about that.
If somebody needs to email Doug the question like, so which is more Christian, geometry or calculus?
Calculus like 1,000 times. Integrals, like that reminds me of the cross, like literally. No way out of it.
Wow.
Have you seen that?
So I'm gonna take back this thing and get it on its right direction here. So email us roundtable@libertarianchristians.com. We will probably answer your question. It really depends on how serious
answer your question.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we might get some real doozies.
Ask us almost anything.
Yeah, ask us almost anything.
No, ask us anything. We're gonna answer almost.
We'll answer.
Ask us.
We
anything.
might even
answer maybe 10%.
We might even just create a whole separate podcast for question and answers. Who knows? But speaking of creating whole separate new things, there is now a new name for the company that we all know and love with such affection as Facebook.
Oh.
So Norm has a little bit of information about Facebook going meta, like I don't know.
Going meta.
It's just like, and I think and are a little bit more attuned to where that actual term came from, and are familiar with the work there. So you can kind of give a little bit of like, well, what the heck is this name all about?
Well, there's so much that could be talked about here. So let's go from, I guess, front to back, and so. Meta is referenced. It's an interesting move on their part, of course, renaming themselves to Meta in reference to the metaverse, so-called. In fact, they're even going to change their stock ticker from FB, which has been their historical ticker, to MVRS, not just META, but MVRS because that's for metaverse. And the notion there is that they believe strongly that the future of the internet is one that for lack of better words, is going to look a lot different than it is now, and it's going to almost be like a secondary form of existence. And if you've seen things like Ready Player One, and there have been plenty more works before that kind of address this sort of thing, like the quintessential cypherpunk novel Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, who is a terrific author and so far superior to Mr. Ready Player One than I can possibly explain here. That's note to Carrie. Go read Snow Crash, please. You'll love it. You will. Trust me, you will.
Okay.
So I mean, it's kind of interesting, and it doesn't I don't know, the interest in that sort of alt world, I think it it makes me curious because I've read enough about this stuff and whatnot that I'm curious what it's going to look like. I mean, imagine if Second Life, which was a popular game of 10 or 15 years ago, was in total VR mode. And you had but instead of actually like trying to control other characters within it, like you were the character in it, and that was how you interacted with an entire broad world, like an open world sort of scenario. Like, I mean, that sounds kind of neat. And what could you do with that? What new forms of commerce and things could be accomplished with such? And so that doesn't really scare me all that much per se. I mean, but also, I guess, the other thing that's Facebook has been in the news for, though, has been a lot of this stuff regarding the so-called, the Facebook papers, the leaks that got onto the Wall Street Journal and now the New York Times and all this. And it just seems to me like it's such a big nothing burger. I don't understand it at all. Like, why are people so concerned when you have, for instance, this deal with Instagram affecting, the self-esteem of teenage girls, which I thought, okay, like, all right, I mean, that could be an issue. Like, so how prevalent is it? And then you find out, well, Instagram is only used by 30% of teens or something to that effect. And you're like, is this really an endemic problem now?
Not to mention that this problem came up with fashion magazines when I was growing up.
Yep.
Well, like you could argue that
I was a reader of fashion magazines. I wasn't.
Well, so you might be able to argue that, well, this is more important than the rash of fashion magazines from back then because it's more prevalent. But then you have to actually ask, like, how prevalent is it relative to the past? And the answer doesn't seem to be like it's all that much.
Social media magnifies our perceptions to the nth degrees incredibly. That it's just far different from reality. That's kind of like the problem that I can see.
And that's different from magazines that were being published. How?
Because it was less interactive.
I've got a teen girl. And she has Instagram. And we have many of the same conversations that I was worried about when I was her age because
that your parents worried about you for. That is.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the point is that she's not, I mean, she may be experiencing this on a new medium. Fine, fair enough. But, and the talk about fashion magazines, it wasn't just that you had to have a fashion magazine in your hand. It was that every time you go to the grocery store, you could see the cover. And that was enough.
Yeah, right.
And I think that the debate is as erroneous today as it was back then. I think that there are other reasons why girls are concerned about the way they look, and it doesn't have to do with Instagram or fashion magazines.
Yep. That's what's baffling about it is that, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, that's something like, okay, yes, there are going to be new things and blah, blah, blah. We know that, but
Bitcoin? Just kidding.
Yes, but the reason the proverb holds and is proverbial is because even though there are these, things that are happening new every day, the principles at hand with which we can deal with them are all still the same. Yeah. And so if the issue is one of, oh, well, my kid is getting, influence from someone, or why aren't you being that influence, oh parent? Yeah. And where is the disconnect really happening?
Oh, that's the question. Is it really parents the ones to complain about it, or just activists? Because usually that's the issue. Activists. What I was telling you about social media is activists through social media magnify the perception from what really is. That's what I try to say.
I think it's activists.
That's what I think.
I will say the only thing that my daughter has to deal with that I didn't have to deal with were Instagram messages. She gets messaged by creepos all the time. She knows how to deal with them. But we've had this conversation, like, this is what you do. You adapt and overcome. That's something that's new that I didn't have to deal with when I was her age, but it's not affecting her self-esteem, at least directly, in any sort of way that was different from my experience growing up.
My only concern will be that it's a distraction for teens when they're supposed to be focusing on school and other things. But outside of that, that will be.
Yeah, but those are things that we have. Those sorts of issues are not new.
Yeah,
and so they're not unique.
Things
we're not in some clear and present danger of getting nuked from orbit here.
Yeah.
That's what I find disingenuous about these, kind of the activists that are going out there after this stuff, is that they don't
misguided. Because I think they really do believe that this is. I think.
They're quite sincere. I mean, they have perhaps even decent motives, but that's not what's of issue here, really. I mean, these people think that they are, in some sense, in a unique position to have an effect upon the world if they just could get this information out there, as if that's what the world is needed, just more information all the time. The lack of information has not really been the driving factor in the moral direction of the world. Okay, that should be our reality, right? We understand that's not the issue. The issue is something more akin to what people are choosing to follow, to believe, to worship, and what they're willing to make the object of their worshipful identity. So that's as Christians, we have to realize that, right? Mm-hmm. So the final thing that I think is the other nothing burger is the aspects of kind of the revelations that are getting published in these reports out of Wall Street Journal and New York Times about kind of the effects of things like the like button and whatnot, which I think are just inane and stupid. And then it gets even worse because they're disingenuously reporting on them. The perfect example is this. Apparently there's this revelation that, angry emoji on posts were counted at like 5x the value of a single like press or something like that. And that's like, oh, well, it's preferentially selecting, the angry stuff over the like button, but of course, completely negating the notion or the other weighted average portion of that algorithm, where the love emoji or care emoji were given 25x the number, the value of just a single like. And you just got to go like
emoji a lot more.
Well,
we just need a taco reaction, right?
That's right.
I have it in Messenger. So
sorry, you were making a point.
Yeah, but the point is that tacos are the best.
Yeah. Oh, right. That's where we're going. Yeah.
That's where we're going with this, guys. No, but the point is really just that the reporting on this is just inane and stupid. That they seem to think that they've got one over on Facebook, and that this is somehow, Facebook is weaponized information against the population, whereas it just doesn't seem to be like it's all of this is a big nothing burger, especially when they're so dadgum insincere in their own criticisms. People are lashing out at Facebook for the way in which they were supposedly complicit with the Vietnam government about censoring elements of news around certain elections over there. And then they're asking them to do the same thing for U.S. elections. What is with these people? Like, you don't have to think that Trump had the election stolen out from under him to be against this. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous.
What's going on without going all that direction. Yeah.
I missed the come on man again. Sorry. Oh. But come on, man. This is ridiculous. Yeah.
Come on, man.
I just don't see how this can be anything but a big nothing burger. Facebook has its problems. No doubt about it. You know what? They should know that better than anybody. You know what their biggest problem is right now? The freaking activists who think that they're going to be able to just take them, to reduce their stock price enough in order to, I guess, screw them over somehow. I don't know. And I'm not like some, ridiculous Facebook fan. Full disclosure, Facebook has matched donations to LCI. So, I mean, I'm a fan in that respect, but that's a whole nother story. Still, this is just dumb. And just from a logical basis, and I don't think that people are really taking into account the fullness of the information to really understand. Again, what the information problem is when people lie about stuff. That's the information problem. Golly. I
miss the days when the only moral panic that existed was Christian evangelical mothers worrying about whether rock music had lyrics that were written backwards.
Oh, those were the days, right?
Those were the days,
Like,
man. Those were like the good old days. We're like, that's what we, yeah, man.
Yeah,
Like,
but to be fair, that the evil of that was was that we were not nearly well exposed enough to Led Zeppelin in the prime time of our lives.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
I'm still catching up on all that I missed.
My daughter likes AC/DC, by the way.
That's interesting.
At what moment are you guys going to mention Seinfeld?
Well, you know what else? You know what else I hope your daughter likes on YouTube is this show, this channel. Just like all of our listeners, I had to do it because
the second best show after Seinfeld.
Yeah, this show is going to be over, this episode, soon. So I want you to like, subscribe, do all the things that you do to give us more attention, get notifications on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget we do this audio podcast. You can listen to the Libertarian Christian podcast. You can also listen to Good News, Bad News as a podcast, just audio, of course, which is great to listen to on your commute every time we release it. So subscribe on your favorite podcatcher, which is a very awkward word for me to use because it just sounds kind of weird. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in about 2 weeks.